I have a question for you. Do you always expect the best in your life? Sometimes, yes, maybe no. Most of us, I think that we do, but I have found that negativity and negative sayings really permeate our society. Have you noticed that? I guess I'm sensitive to it, but I've really been noticing that. Then they just kind of pop into our heads automatically, like those old commercials. Remember the old cigarette commercials? Winston tastes good like. Right. I mean, but they're still in there. They haven't played those things in 30 years, probably, right? So the negative stuff is out there. And things like, I can't. We're just automatically saying, I can't. It's just the way things are. Oh, the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. There's never enough. There's just never enough to go around. And if it weren't for bad luck, I'd have no luck at all. They even write songs about this stuff, right? Yeah. So there's so much of that out there. Dana Sparks, she's written an article for the Mayo Clinic, and she asked that age old question: is your glass half empty or half full? And she says, how you answer this question about positive thinking may reflect your outlook on life, your attitude towards yourself, and whether you're optimistic or pessimistic, and it may even affect your health. Yeah, may even affect your health. Now, my talk today is the same as our reading this morning: brush it off, meaning to brush off those negative thoughts, just like our reading said, and not to allow those to get embedded into our subconscious. And if you've been around the science of mind for several years, you probably lean towards the more optimistic, yes, because that's what we teach, right? That's what we teach. But those doggone pesky negative thoughts are still there. Am I the only one that has them pop up in my little brain? Yeah, they're there. So Ernest Holmes, our founder of Centers for Spiritual Living, he's also the author of The Science of Mind, the book that we teach from. He says it's not that we consciously create bad or unpleasant experiences in our lives, but we are aware of the possibilities, perhaps fear it, and in some other way give it entrance into our minds. So that's sort of that answer to that question. That's a misunderstanding in our teaching frequently, where something unpleasant happens and someone would say, what were you thinking to create that and bring that into your life? And Holmes is telling us that that's not necessarily true, which our reading also told us today as well. There's a lot of negative stuff out there that we're exposed to. Our work is to keep it out of our subconscious, right? To brush off that negativity. Today, more than ever, of course, we're bombarded by information, aren't we? We get it everywhere. We've got it on our handhelds. We've got it on TV. We've got it on billboards, on the radio, people talking around us, right? It's everywhere. And it may be on the news, the media, social media, commercials. Have you noticed the drug company commercials or the lawyer commercials? Are those negative and scary things? It's like, oh my gosh, I have a cough. I must have that thing. What is that thing? I can't spell it. It's about this long, but I must have it. And what do we do with our morning commute or our drive time whenever we're driving? What are we doing with that time? Are we listening to the radio? Are we listening to talk radio? Are we listening to an empowering audiobook? Even traffic reports can be negative, because what does that do? It triggers in our brains a little judgment thing going, boy, the drivers in Arizona are so bad. Can you believe that? How do they flip that car? How do they do that on the freeway? Right? Holmes tells us that if we allow the world's opinion to control our thinking, then that will be our demonstration in life. That's an important statement when we consider what all is being broadcast out there to us, what we're exposed to on a consistent basis. That's a really big statement. Lack, limitation, fear, poverty, greed, disease, criticism, blame. We see that all the time, don't we? I mean, just watching the evening news, we see and hear those things. And I certainly don't want any more of that in my life. Do you? If you remember what our journal said today, that beautiful quote in there, after they catch your attention, if you don't brush them off, but allow them to smolder in your consciousness and stoke them with your fear or anger, because anger is a powerful emotion too, the destructive thoughts will burn and blaze a path of destruction through your life. It's important to brush these things off, right? Because we know the power of our words. We use them in our prayers all the time. We use them in our affirmations all the time. They are powerful. We give them power. So we know that the negative words also have power. And we know the power of our subconscious. We've been talking about that for several months, how it is how we operate. About 95% of our lives is by the subconscious. So we really want to make sure we aren't embedding those embers of negativity there to be manifest as our life. Now, positive thinking, you've probably heard about a lot of years. It was popularized by, thank you, yes, Norman Vincent Peale, name escaped me. And now, today, we have positive psychology. They've changed the name, but it's kind of the same stuff. Ernest Holmes wrote about it in 1938 and before, right? So it's been around for a long time. It's been around for a long time because it works. It works. And it doesn't mean that we're going to bury our heads in the sand. That's another one of those misconceptions of science of mind. Oh, those people are so Pollyannish. They just they just bury their heads in the sand. And that's not what we do. Positive thinking means we approach unpleasantness with in a more positive and productive way. Imagine the difference in the world if rather than running around like chickens with our heads cut off when something happens, we simply address it in a more positive way to fix the challenge, to communicate better. Imagine that world. Imagine that world. This idea, of course, is core to our Science of Mind teaching. Ernest Holmes says, "We know there is a power far greater than we are. There is a love that casts out fear, and a faith that overcomes all obstructions. We must permit ourselves, through affirmative thinking, to enter into this power and this love with complete confidence. If we can believe that the Spirit within us makes perfect and happy the way before us, we then enter into conscious union with everything that lives and commune with the Spirit in all people and all things." Now, what is he telling us? He's affirming that we are one, created by a power far greater than we are. And that power is love. And we are that which that is, aren't we? We are that love. And it also tells us that when we understand that power is love and we realize we are love, that we then have faith to overcome all obstacles. Imagine that. One of the things that I love about this teaching that really drew me to it in the beginning and has kept me here for 20 plus years is that it is affirmative and it teaches us how to transform our lives. It's not just all theoretical theology, great ideas, but it's practices and ways that we can apply this to our lives and our daily walk and with everything. It applies to all areas of our lives. And of course, our spiritual practices is the way that we do begin that transformation process. Holmes says that when Holmes tells us to permit ourselves to enter into the power and the love with complete confidence, we do that through our spiritual practices, how we enter into that power. It's here and it's a part of us at all times, but we forget. We get distracted by all of the things in the outer realm, and it's the inner realm is where the power resides within us. And this is that conscious union that Holmes speaks about. And it begins when we remember our union with the divine and with each other. It's that first step of treatment that we do, recognizing that God is all and that we are that which it is in unity, in unity. And we begin to remember that not only are we connected in spirit, but with life. And when we remember that, it brings confidence. Have you noticed that in your spiritual practices? That the more connected that you feel, the more plugged in to spirit that you feel, the more confident you feel in life. Have you noticed that? And that's what Holmes is teaching us, is that use those spiritual practices to build our confidence in life. So if you're not 1,000% positive in all of your thoughts or speech right now, not to worry, not to worry. Changing our thinking is possible, and it begins, as all change does, with recognizing that maybe my current thoughts, maybe my current attitude is not exactly getting me to where I want to be. Maybe I could shift a few things there. Or maybe we're confused about why we're not where we want to be, and maybe that's some place to look. May not be true, may not be what's going on at all, but maybe it's some place to look. If you notice that you're critical, judgmental, or feeling like a victim, those are good signs, aren't they? Those are good signs to take a peek and go, "Ooh, what is this about? What am I thinking right now? What am I thinking about this situation or this person or myself even? What am I thinking about?" It's those powerful emotions that are keys for us to recognize that something's churning, something's going on, and a good time to pause and reflect. I was going to say most of us, but I'm going to say I have. I'm going to assume maybe somebody else in the room has a endless stream of unspoken chatter, thoughts that just continue, right? And it's the most creative chatter on the planet. It's just fascinating to pay attention to it sometimes because it can argue both sides. It's the best attorney out there. It can argue the positive or the negative. It can make irrational or radical comments and decisions. It can be judgmental. It can be kind. It can be um, inspirational. It can be all of those things, but it's constant. It's constant. Some of us call it monkey chatter, some of us call it other things. But these thoughts have a tendency to be very automatic and lean towards the affirmative or lean towards the not so affirmative, the negative, or both. Have you noticed that? Oh my gosh, can you believe what she's wearing? Can you believe he drove that car? Can you believe, oh my gosh, look how beautiful those shoes are. Those are the most gorgeous shoes I've ever seen. I wonder where she got them. Oh my goodness, that's just amazing. I can't believe they said that. Oh, mama. Is it just me? When we look at the law of attraction, when we look at the law of attraction, the ability to attract into our lives what we're focusing on, we can begin to understand the importance of cleaning up this chatter because the law of attraction does what? It attracts into our lives that which we are focusing on, that which we are thinking about. So if we're thinking about negative and judgmental things and being a victim, what are we calling into our lives? More of that stuff, right? We all know this. Thank you, Abraham Hicks, for bringing this to the big screen, so to speak. But Ernest has been talking about it since 1938 and before. There's 2 chapters in the Science of Mind. If you don't read any other chapters in the Science of Mind, read these 2 chapters. Chapter 17, it's called Mental Equivalence, and it's about creating the visual in your mind's eye of what it is that you want to call into your life and the importance of that. So think about that with all of the negativity that's out there and the visions that you're creating in your life. Okay, that's that's one incentive, right? The second is chapter 18, which is the law of attraction, and this one explains to you once you have that mental equivalent then how to call it forth, how to bring it into form into your life. So these 2 chapters are proven techniques that work in the laws of universal beingness for manifesting our lives. So those are the 2 I'm going to recommend that you read for more details about that. But let's keep going on negative thinking. So, our negative thinking is more than just our words or more than just our thoughts. It's also our habits, our actions, our activities, and things, the ways that we behave, right? That can be negative as well. Want to look at a couple of, or actually four of those real quickly. One is filtering. Filtering. Filtering is when we focus on the negative aspects of a situation and filter out all of the positive. Let's say you're doing a presentation and you're doing it for 101 people. And at the end of the presentation, 100 people come up and tell you how wonderful your presentation was. And it's just filled with praise and accolades. And one person tells you how horrible it was, and they are critical. And you go home that night and you sit down, and what do? Do you focus on the one or do you focus on the 100? If we focus on the one, that's the filtering. We're filtering out all of our good to focus on the one negative thing. So pay attention to that. Pay attention to that on the filtering. It's filtering out our good and letting the universe know that we prefer that negative experience. Okay? So careful. Personalizing is when something bad happens and we automatically blame ourselves. Oh my gosh, it must be my fault. We automatically take blame for something. Maybe you've had a dinner with friends and it got canceled, and you automatically think, they just didn't want to be with me. They didn't want to be around me. I bet they went and met without me anyway. Oh my gosh, it's all me, right? That's the personalization of it, accepting that blame. Rather than a more positive approach might be to assume that cancellation is a gift from the universe for me because I'm going to have a much better opportunity to take advantage of or to be able to spend a quiet evening at home. Look at it as a gift rather than blaming self. Number three is catastrophizing. And that's when we automatically anticipate the worst. Oh my gosh. Had a great demonstration of this on our flight back from Virginia. Is actually when we changed planes in North Carolina. We'd already been delayed. I don't remember how long, but we finally got on the plane and I'm ready to go. And we're on the runway. And all of a sudden the captain comes on and things kind of slowed down a little bit. And he says, "Ladies and gentlemen, I regret to inform you that we have been moved off of the runway onto this side runway and told we cannot take off because there's a tailwind. And we can't take off with a tailwind." And they told us it might be hours. And you could hear the collective groan through the whole plane as we all saw in our mind, our mental equivalent was all of those news stories that we've seen of people who have been parked on an airplane on a runway for hours without food and couldn't get out of their seats and no air conditioning, right? We all saw that. It's like, oh my. And I thought, now wait a minute. I want to go home. I mean, I love my trip, but I don't want to sit on a runway in North Carolina. I want to go home. So I said, Spirit, there's another way. I don't know what it is, but I know there's a solution. Reveal it now. A few minutes later, the captain came back on and he said, I'm going to call the tower and talk to them because we've got 250 people that really want to go home here. I'll be back with you. So there's chatter on the plane a little bit. Comes back on a few minutes later and he says, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to let you know that Charlotte International Airport is going to turn the airport around. And I went, what? In my mind, I went, what? And he said, they're going to redirect all the incoming flights to land the opposite way so that they're landing with the tailwind and we can take off in a headwind. He said it'd probably be 30 minutes or less. We were off the ground in 20. So rather than catastrophizing, make room for spirit to work in our lives. I did not have any idea that they could turn an airport around. So just remember that story. Polarizing is when we see things only as either good or bad, black or white. There is no other possibility. How many arguments have you witnessed with that? It's this way. No, it's this way. No, it's tennis match, right? This way, this way, this way. We forget about this field of infinite possibilities that we live in. So rather than allowing ourselves to be polarized on opposite ends of the stick on a decision or an issue, what if we said, okay, what's in the middle? What's in between? What are the other alternatives that we might be able to come up with here? Rather than allowing ourselves to get polarized at opposite ends of the decision or the issue, look for the middle ground, look for the third way, allow that field of infinite possibilities. So we can see how our habits of negative thinking, words, and actions might be a challenge to manifesting our dreams. Thankfully, the process is simple, but it does take time, it does take practice. And because we're changing a habit of thinking, right, it takes commitment and willpower. It takes commitment and willpower. And so we're going to move into our practicing the principles this morning and look at some ways that maybe we can take these home this week and begin to clean up our thinking. If you, like me, have a few negative thoughts once in a while. So, we just want to clean out those little couple of ones that happen sometimes. So, number one is the power of change. If you want to be more optimistic and engage in more positive thinking, look for the areas where there are triggers, right? Look for the areas that you're most negative in. Maybe it is work, health, abundance, relationships. And relationships can be personal, familial, intimate, relationship with yourself. It can be in business, right? Sometimes we are just really calm and peaceful every place except in the office because that one person just right. Or it can be a relationship with someone. As soon as you see them, as soon as you see your brother-in-law, your sister-in-law, your mother-in-law, or a friend, a particular friend's husband or wife, or whatever it might be, and you have a reaction, right? You have a reaction. So notice that. Focus on one area to start with. And if it is a relationship, and every time you see this person, you're automatically triggered. And what does our brain do? Our brain begins to look for validation of its beliefs. Yes? So it's going to find every possible thing. And this person's breathing wrong, for goodness sakes, right? It's going to find every possible thing. So rather than allowing that to happen, begin to turn that around. Think something positive about them. Again, a commitment and willpower, right? But think something positive about them. See if you can expand on that until you begin to notice more good. Well, I guess they're not breathing that bad. I guess that haircut's not that ugly. I get Just move into it slowly until it's safe for them to walk through the corridors of your mind. Number two, check it from the neck up. We talked a little bit about this a couple of weeks ago. Throughout this week, stop and notice what you're thinking. That's the only way we change our thinking is to know what we're thinking, right? So we have to stop and notice. If you have to set an alarm every hour, what was I just thinking about? What was I just thinking about? Where were my thoughts? Where were my thoughts? Asking yourself if it's really true what you're thinking. Or is this just that little monkey chatter thing going on in there that's not even true? Have I ever said or done that thing that I'm being critical or judgmental of? Have I ever said or done that? Can I find some gratitude or compassion for this person? Those are great qualities to look for and to come up with. And think of something positive. Say an affirmation. Saying an affirmation begins to reprogram our brains that, oh, they don't want to think those negative thoughts. She wants to think positive. Oh, every time I go, she goes. Every time I go, she goes. Until that begins to get us to thinking affirmative thoughts. Number three is get funny. Get funny. Humor is a great tool to turn around our pessimistic attitude. So this week, your mission is to watch a funny movie. Laugh at life. Laugh at life. Just have a good time with it. Seek humor, look for irony, and know that you can laugh at life. And don't take it all so seriously because we know it's going to pass, right? Everything eventually does. Everything eventually passes. Number four, attend Scottsdale Center for Spiritual Living, right? Attend Scottsdale Center for Spiritual Living. Surrounding yourself with positive thinking people, not only at our center, but in your life. If you've got a negative Nelly in your life that's bringing you down and causing you stress, have a conversation, right? It's difficult for negative people to be in the presence of super positive people because they can't stand the light and they will either change their behavior or they fade away. So when we can hold in our truth, stand in our truth, as Brene says, be courageous and brave the wilderness of our truth and be positive and affirmative, then we shall begin to surround ourselves with more supportive people. Negative people increase my stress level. How about yours? Yeah. Number 5 is practice. Practice positive self-talk. Louise Hay's mirror work is good for this. If you've ever done that, where you stand in the mirror and say affirmations about yourself, don't think of it. Don't think anything about yourself. To yourself that you wouldn't say to someone else. Don't think anything to yourself that you would not say to anyone else. That's a big one because a lot of times we can control what words come out of our mouth, but the thoughts are still going on, right? So work on that. Work on that. Be gentle, encouraging with yourself. If the negative thought does enter your mind, look at it and turn it around. Say an affirmation. Say something that's good. And of course, gratitude. Diane brings us gratitude every week, and gratitude is a powerful tool to help us live more affirmatively. So, meditation allows us to enter the love that casts out fear and faith that overcomes all obstructions that Ernest Holmes was telling us about. And meditation and gratitude, of course, are the routes that we can use for more affirmative living. It was Viktor Frankl who said of his incarceration in Auschwitz prison, "The last of the human freedoms is to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances." And this from a man who was tortured and kept in a prison for many years and survived it, and recognized that his mind was all that he had control over. Everything else was gone. And that's his advice to us, is the last human freedom is to choose our attitude in any given set of circumstances. So this week, let's choose to live affirmatively. Yes? Yes. So it is. Let's have a prayer this morning and anchor this, if you will join me. How good it is that we come together in community as we recognize that there is one power, one presence, one life, and that life is God. That life is source. It is essence and presence. It is love, intuition, intelligence, and wisdom. And all of that is right here now, present in, through, and as me as an expression of it, and in, through, and as each one of us gathered here in the room, gathered online with us right now, or those joining us later and watching our service. We just know that we are all unified, no matter of time, no matter of space. We are all unified in this wholeness, in this oneness that is God, from our source, the source of our very being, that which lives, moves, and has its being within us, and in whom we have our being, our livingness. We are that leading edge of consciousness. And so, knowing this, I speak my word for and about each one of us, claiming and accepting the absolute affirmative life that we are, that we live. The very being of us is affirmative living, is a positive living, because it knows that we are love. It has that confidence. It is the faith that overcomes all obstacles. And we anchor and ground ourselves in this knowing and in this truth right here, right now, that every cell of our being is love, is health, is wholeness, is abundance, is joy, is peace. And how good it is to know this, to believe this, to trust this as we move forward in our lives. I know for anyone this day that has anything on their heart that they seek prayer around, as they lift it into the consciousness of this prayer, that we surround that with our love and our light, as we know the wholeness of that individual, knowing that whatever truth needs to be revealed is revealed with ease and with clarity, that whatever healing is revealed as the wholeness of who and what they are, that every cell of the body knows exactly what to do in the creation and manifestation of perfect and divine right health. And I know that abundance flows through and to this center, through and to each one of us here gathered, and to and through all on our planet. For abundance is our divine nature. It is the abundance of all life that we see reflected around us and that we experience within us, anchored in this power and presence of the divine. And I know that all relationships are healthy and whole, loving and kind, generous and prosperous. And I'm so grateful for this knowing. Grateful for the manifestation of this prayer, grateful for such knowing such love and such wholeness that we are, and the unity that we are in all things. And in that gratitude, I release this prayer into the action of law, the activity of mind, knowing that it is already done, for the word spoken is the word made manifest. And we accept this together today by saying, and so it is.